Founded in 2014, the Extraordinary Achievers' vision is to empower others to be the best version of themselves. The show is hosted by Chief Lady Waynette Peters, a multi-entrepreneur, empowerment speaker, confidence mentor, positive lifestyle coach, humanitarian ambassador, and a TV host. Lady Waynette is a holder of over 35 international awards for her humanitarian, philanthropic, and international empowerment contributions and holds 2 chieftaincy titles. Welcome to the Extraordinary Achievers Show.
For real-life stories broadcasted live on air, to please subscribe to our newsletter from our website. We will be honored if you could please like and follow our Facebook pages. Stay in touch and tune in by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Thank you for following us on our Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Tumblr, and TikTok. We are live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. GMT. Please do share with others.
We would like to encourage you to follow us on our Facebook pages. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have a Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn account. We will be delighted to connect with you. Thank you for joining us to another episode of the Extraordinary Achievers Show, where we are covering community affairs and interests. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all our viewers from our website, we welcome you. We would like to take this opportunity to thank the various admins of the several Facebook pages we air live, and especially to you that has shared this program. And if you haven't shared this program yet, this is your opportunity that we would like to say, please share and please do comment. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank the head of our media team, King Darren Robinson, and his whole media team and our administration team for the work behind the scene. This program is brought to you by myself, Lady Waynette Peters, and the Extraordinary Achievers team, and of course, our special guests that we have for our program this evening. We would like to once again thank you, our viewers. Your audience is truly appreciated. Joining us as our expert panel on this show is Brian David Hudson. Mr. Brian David Hudson, welcome to the Extraordinary Achievers.
Evening.
Thank you. Good evening. We are also joined by Mr. Sean Buchanan. Mr. Sean, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. We are also joined by Mr. Jason Appleyard, also otherwise known as the Apple What's It. Good evening to you.
Jason, how you doing? You good?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for joining us. Gentlemen, fathers, we welcome you onto the Extraordinary Achievers Show. And today we will be discussing parental alienation awareness in support of reducing the stigma against single fathers. Alienating of fathers from their children takes place, and in most cases, fathers are being alienated. In the UK, around 90% of single parents are women. The proportion who are men has remained at around 10% for over a decade. In the UK, there are 1.8 million single parents. They make up nearly a quarter of families with dependent children. Just over 3 million children live in single parent families. And today we would like to talk about what can be done different and what is being done and what is the way forward. We are going to introduce Brian. Brian, welcome back onto our screens. Brian David Hudson. Brian came into the family law arena early in 2017 after the breakdown of his marriage, experiencing what he soon learned to be the silver bullet technique that many viewers will be familiar with. Horrified and bewildered by his own experience and how the family courts were operating, Brian began to lift up rocks to find the answers to what was driving apparent corrupted processes and backwards decision making. Over the last 2 years, Brian has campaigned both on his own and together with other groups such as Parental Alienation UK and Families Need Fathers, and has become well known among campaigners for the depth of statistical analysis he has undertaken that is providing evidence to counteract the narrative that continues to drive corrupted practices in family law. Most recently, Brian has uncovered data that shows excess mortality among parents under the Child Maintenance Service at a rate of over 100 parental deaths that he believes can only be an attribute to man taking their own lives. You can learn more about this on his website. We will be putting all the links on how to contact him and his website in the comment box below. Brian is now establishing the United Parenting Federation to bring together groups and charities who are campaigning for equal parenting and family law, reform together into a united effort. Details of how you can follow Brian will be in the comment box below for future developments on this work in the description. Brian, thank you for joining us this evening. And Brian, we would like to ask you your first question this evening. How did your organization come about?
Well, it's still being built right now. It's very early days, and I hope to be launching a website in the next 3-4 weeks, and then bringing experts together. I'm already getting quite a number of experts reaching out to me, who will be part of our expert task force. And it's really come about because I've seen that there's a need for it. There are hundreds of groups now and charities, organizations, CICs. Many of them are replicating their work, and on this side of the debate, there's a lack of coordination and working together. So the idea behind UPF is to try to remedy that and align all of that effort into a singular voice, but give them the space still to carry on working largely autonomously, and create a funnel for funding that can help them deliver projects on the ground locally or in their niche.
Thank you, Brian. And Brian, we will be back with you shortly. If you've just joined us, welcome to the Extraordinary Achievers Show, where we're looking at the rights of fathers and how we can support them. And next, we are going to be introducing Sean. Sean, we welcome you back onto our screens. Thank you, Sean, for joining us this evening. We appreciate you taking time out to join us. But before we introduce you, we would like to play this video in the honor of something else that you do. This is Jack Royal Seasonings. Sean Buchanan is an intuitive character with a distinct style of writing that combines spiritual aphorisms with real-life circumstances. Through this style, he has produced the book Road of Life, a journal based on the problems faced in today's reality by people from all walks of life, from day-to-day living to religion, politics, and social standing. In March 2013, he published his final year dissertation, Will the UK Black Press Survive the Financial Crisis? Here he covers the struggles of the Black British press from the 19th century to the current recession. He has worked previously for the BBC and written various match reports on football events which were placed on the BBC Sports website. Whilst dedicating himself to the cause of fathers' rights within the UK, he is currently running his own promotional company, S&S Entertainment, alongside working on future publications. The author now currently lives in Wimbledon, London, and is a graduate of Thames Valley University in New Media Journalism and Digital Broadcasting. He is currently working on 3 new projects: the Islamic Conspiracy, Liaisons of Nature, and a screenplay called The Visionaries. He intends to leave a legacy that is greater than himself before he passes beyond the veil. And today we welcome him onto the Extraordinary Achievers Show. And Sean, we would like to ask you your first question. Why do you campaign for the fathers' rights?
Well, personally, I got involved in 2013. A couple of my companions at the time were complaining about their personal situations with their children. And I thought, we need to do something progressive here, because if we're just going to complain, then what's going to happen in the future when our children look back and said, you had a chance to make a stand, and how did you improve things in your time so we could have a better tomorrow? So I organized a petition, or composed it really. And I launched it on the governmental website, and I was stunned that I only got 500 signatures in 6 months. So I took a time to reflect, took a step back, and I realized I had to do some marketing around it, more than just word of mouth and contacting people that I know that had been alienated from their children. So the second round of the petition I created through change.org, and I put some money into it in terms of marketing to try and broaden the reach to connect with people that have been through the same things. And between that happening, I had my own problems with my eldest son, where I was alienated from him during a family court case, and some problem with child services when I reported his mother for having my son have contact with a convicted molester. And because I thought I had that on my side in terms of me trying to get single residency, being the main parent, I found the difficulties that Brian David Hudson can more stipulate and construe and show that illustrate what's happened to dads around the UK. The experience there was, well, to be fair, is terrible. And that's driven me on to try and interact with other organizations to try and provide the coordination that Brian's talking about, to get us all together to speak under one voice to rival organizations similar to Women's Aid, Refuge and Rise. Because I noticed in the media there's almost a complete blackout of the male opinion around parenting, and we seem to be demonized in the press. And because of that, I've said that I've got to take a stand in the name of social justice to try and prevent that from happening.
Thank you for that introduction. We welcome you onto the show, and our viewers are looking forward to hearing more from you. We are now going to introduce you to our next guest this evening, and that is Jason Appleyard, otherwise known as the Apple Watsits. Jason is known to be frank speaking, getting his messages across however needs must. Jason has worked with Fathers for Justice and Matter Corner. Jason Appleyard has been helping people since 2014 and has transformed his passion into an affordable business for all, helping as many people as he can through the family court system. His business is called Apple Watts Limited, Fathers' Rights UK, Official, and Apple Watsits Equality. Some people wait a lifetime to find their purpose. Jason states that he found his purpose in 2014. Jason says with the pain he went through, his over the worst of it, but states you never really get over it. And now his purpose is to help others, as many people as he can. Jason Epplard believes you fix children's rights, then you will fix the father's rights. It's about equality. Parenting alienation is not a gender specific thing. Jason, thank you so very, very, very much for taking time out this evening and joining us on the Extraordinary Achievers show. Jason,
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. What was the drive behind you deciding on representing fathers in court?
I think for me, it was not knowing I had no rights until I got into that situation. You Google stuff, you Google like solicitors and whatnot, and then you find out the price of a solicitor or a paralegal, and it's very expensive. And you're generally speaking, your ex-partner will have allegations lined up for you, and they'll get legal aid, so they'll get a solicitor. And there's no one out there to help men. And I was very, very, very much suicidal and really, really in a bad place when someone picked me up and squeezed me out and said, "Come on, I've not stood no cats or nothing. I'm not that much of a bad person." Some might argue. And I sorted myself out and got myself out of the gutter. And off the back of that, once I got myself to a certain level of strength, that I was able to make sure I could deal with my own stuff as well as help other people, because you can't help everyone. So I think it's difficult because I've lost like four people over the course since I've been doing this stuff. 4 people suicide through fighting for the kids, and I want to stop as many people as I can from killing themselves and making sure that they know that they're okay and they're important and they're equally as important as the mum. Yeah, that's how it started.
Thank you, Jason. Jason, in your experience, is change being made?
I wish it was. I don't think it is, though. I think I think Brian said a few bits earlier that sort of stood out. The stats speak for themselves. I'm not gender specific. I've got a daughter that I want equality for my daughter. I want equality for men and women, but equality means equality, and that means that we have to take compromise and do what we need to do. But sometimes you go into court and you get a decent result based on the evidence that you've got, and then other times you've got really, really clear evidence and it doesn't work that way. So I would like to be able to say it's changing, but it's absolutely not changing. Men are still demonized. We're the first people off the boat. A boat sinks, men are out of the boat. Women and children go first. We're indispensable. We're gone. Yeah, people who go to war, men. Yeah, people who lose the house and leave the kids with the house and with the mum and whatnot, men. It's us that get the short straw, and that's not a bad thing because it's life. That's how the system's set up.
Thank you. We would like to welcome you onto the Extraordinary Achievers show, and we would like to acknowledge some of your comments that you have. Good evening to you all, and thank you for sharing this program. Thank you for your love that you share in each week. Melissa says, good evening, and good evening to you, Melissa. Sophia Lambry says, good evening, and good evening to you. Empress Joanne, good evening, beautiful people, she says, and good evening, gorgeous. And Bangi says, hello, everyone. Good to be back and great to have you back on the show. Sophia says, looking forward to the show. Sophia and Anaya. Anaya, hugs and kisses. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Mr. Simon C. Brown, hello and good evening to you. And thank you for joining us again this evening. Vicky, our administrator, says good evening and good evening to you. And she says good evening to our guests. Pastor Liz, good evening and thank you. Kelsey, thank you as you're driving there, stuck on the motorway. Good evening to you. And Tani says good evening and good evening to you too. Kevin Baxter says good evening and good evening to you. Adepeju says good evening and good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. T. Alabi says, not sure why women do this. It only harms the children in the end. And that is very true. T goes on to say, not sure why women do this. Really hard for a child to choose between parents, and we agree. It's not right. Totally agree, not enough to help men. This needs to change, from Simon Brown. And thank you for your comment. Podcast Anonymous says, good evening. I am late, but I'm here, and you are here in good time. Donald says, good evening, and good evening to you. And he acknowledges the panel that we have today. We are now going to welcome back Jason. Jason, we have one more question for you before we go on to Brian. Brian, are men being disadvantaged when it comes to rights for their children in the system? Brian, welcome back onto our screens.
Hi, sorry about that. So could you give me the question again, please? So I've got a 9-year-old vampire over there needing a bit of attention.
You are a dad, and that's the most important thing, that you are being a dad. Are men being disadvantaged when it comes to rights for their children in the system?
I think that the system, I prefer to kind of keep away from the gender war side of things, and I think that the system benefits itself, and whether mum or dad or both are victims of that doesn't really matter to the system and to the professionals largely that work within it, so long as they are achieving their business goals. Statistically speaking, you know, men are more disadvantaged, but you know, the reality is that, you know, in a great number of cases, both mum and dad end up being disadvantaged, and the children are always disadvantaged. So that's really what we need to fix. I wouldn't want to swap it the other way so that women are disadvantaged instead of men. And I wouldn't want to equalize it so that half of women and half of men are disadvantaged and the other half are advantaged. You know, I mean, really, we need to be stopping these wars from happening. Prevention is always better than cure, and an industry has been created essentially to, you know, to raid family estates. In my view, from everything that I've seen, and from, you know, what the data tells me, and from the resistance to change.
Is the system structured to favor women?
I think it's probably easier to favor women, but what I actually find is typically it's first mover advantage. I think we've developed a culture where you know, women, statistically speaking, are more likely to instigate a separation in a family than a dad is. And they will be statistically therefore more likely to go and see a family law solicitor. And once, you know, if they've done that, they have first mover advantage, and they'll very often be advised what strategy to deploy. And that will typically involve, you know, the silver bullet technique. As Jason mentioned earlier, you know, lining up false allegations. And, you know, there are lots of statutory instruments now to be used that were created to protect victims of abuse, but they are widely gamed to just create litigation advantage at the point of separation. And I think once that route is traveled down, it's very difficult to turn back.
Thank you. And do you, in your experience, is change being made?
Statistically, I mean, the numbers, you know, the data that is coming out is showing that the change that is happening is all in the wrong direction. And I'm really fearful for where that's going. I think that there is, you know, there's an awful lot more pressure for change from this side of the debate. There are a lot more very high caliber people who are campaigning, who are producing some wonderful work, and it's getting noticed And the response to it from the industry is that they invest more time, effort, money, resources into trying to silence that campaigning effort. And they're largely being successful doing that. So I think we probably have a period of time where things will get worse than they are now, before they get better. Ultimately, they have to get better because the social consequences are too severe already, and they're becoming much worse year on year.
Thank you, Brian. We are now going to go and ask the very same questions. And at this time round, we welcome Sean to answer some questions for us. Sean, we're going to ask you the same two questions. In your experience, is change being made?
I don't think so. From anecdotal evidence and my own experiences, I see injustice happening every day. Fathers can only become the resident parent without relationship breakdown if they're in receipt of the child benefit. A lot of people don't really know that. And because we're socialized to go out to work and mothers stay at home to nurture the children, they're most likely to claim the child benefit. So that instantly makes them the legal guardian over fathers. So say, for instance, once I signed on once and I was out of work and I tried to get my son to change school with the local authority. Local authority said I couldn't do that without the say-so of the mother because I wasn't in receipt of the child benefit. That's the only way I found out. So I naturally thought because I had parent responsibility on the birth certificate, which happened from 2003, which in itself is a travesty, not to the 21st century that unmarried fathers had any kind of entitlement or rights with their children. And they turned around and said, look, you need to contact the mother and get the mother to come in to change schools. I said, yeah, but we're in agreement and I've got a letter here saying that she agrees to it. But I said I wasn't allowed to make that call unless she was present. So it's that in itself shows me there's not much change. Even some of the attitudes I've seen in my family members with when my father used to have arguments with my mother, she'd put his clothes out at the house and tell him that he had to leave, even though he's the one paying the mortgage. And these are the things I grew up seeing and I was against. So combined with the statistics that I've seen from Brian David Hudson and Family Needs Fathers, Fathers for Justice, 90% of households are mothers, as I told you previously. Only 400,000 single households from what I've read from Gingerbread and ONS statistics online in the whole of the UK, when we have a population near 70 million. And I find that in itself speaks for itself loudly that, as my colleagues on here are saying, that it's unfair. And we to draw the short straw when it comes to relationship breakdown, and even before then, from when the child is born.
So would you say that the system is still structured to favor women?
No, I would say so, yes. Because that's the way we're socialized.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like mother's love, as you've heard yourself. They get the support because obviously they're the birth parent and you're sure of your mother. And so until what, the 1980s, early 90s, you could only tell fathers for sure through paternity testing. So that in itself shows you that.
And in your eyes and in your experience, what is the good progress that has been made so far? What changes have been made? We understand that we are a long way to go, but what progress has been made so far?
Well, in education and awareness, I've known has increased since 2003. Definitely, there's been an increase in the organizations, but as Brian Hudson said, it's fractured, and because there's division and between the two different organizations in terms of continuity and speaking under one voice, it's hard to get a coordinated strategy in place that we can rival organizations like Women's Aid and Rise and Refuge to provide the alternative narrative based on facts and reality, which currently that doesn't happen. Is a lot of the kind of interactions through the press and through politics, it seems to be a controlling one to marginalize that and to promote the feminist agenda, when it should be to come together and say that you're both parents, so there should be equality in terms of responsibility and privilege around your children, especially when there's relationship breakdown. It should be encouraged and fostered. Now, in the letter of the law, when you read the legislations, it does say that there's no difference between mothers and fathers. But in the reality of the day-to-day operation of the family courts and the child services and the institutions that help uphold the family, well, not really uphold, but break them down, is they turn around and say, well, that may be true on paper, but in practice, that's not what happens. And obviously, I've been a victim of that with my eldest son, who I'm estranged from, and millions of fathers around the UK, and not just the UK, internationally. Canada, there's the same similar kind of problems. The USA, similar kind of problems. Australia, similar kind of problems. The only countries that I've noticed that don't really have these kind of issues around families and children is countries from the Middle East, like the Arab Emirates, Islamic countries, certain African countries. I notice there's less of these kind of antics that happen. So for me, it's by design. And the improvements that we've had is only superficial.
And why do you think that you have like Islamic countries not having the same issues as us? Why is that?
Well, I think it's basically down to the religion. The religion see the men as head of the household, but then feminists would turn around and say, oh, it's oppressive towards women and that they don't have much rights, not realizing that some women prefer to live in the kind of family structure and hierarchy that they have in those countries. And as a consequence, what I've noticed, there's less juvenile delinquency, there's less street crimes, there's less disorder. But then other people turn around and say, well, it's not really a free society, from spectating from a European perspective, looking over and reading the news and the mediums that pump those messages over it that, oh, they don't live too good and you've got it very well and handed in the UK and that you're living a better life. And then some come over and says, well, you have all these kind of social problems amongst your younger members of your country with drinking, demonstrations, unruliness, delinquency. So it depends on your perspective and what you value, really.
Thank you, Sean. We are now going to address some comments from our viewers, and we welcome those comments onto our screens. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for participating. And we welcome the first comment from one of our viewers. And Simon says, totally agree, not enough to help men. This needs to change. And we have T. Alabi says, unfortunately, men are seen as the dominant force in a relationship. That doesn't help if a woman claims abuse in any form. Yes, men need more help. Norma Ellis says, good evening. And we have seen that one before and we appreciate her. I think everyone here is loving that. And Simon says, the system needs to be child-centered, which sadly it's not. Norma again says the system does favor women. So a woman is saying, yes, the system is favoring women. Norma again says, as a mother, I feel it for fathers. And Simon says, sadly, when the man claims he's been abused, they're not believed or told to man up, as I went through this. So Simon shares his personal experience and says he went through being told to man up. And Norma says it's up to us women to help make the changes. And that's what we're doing today. We're saying, what can we do to support the men in our community? Adetunji says, Thermal deserves all the lights they can get. She alone carried the baby for 9 months, breastfed her when most men were acting like babies themselves, still looking for milk. Pull your trousers up. A man needs to be a soldier, not be a cry baby, and look out for his troops, not depending on others to do it. I'm sorry. And that is his opinion. We appreciate your comment, TJ. But this evening, we are looking at those men that are good men, because there are some really, really, really good men out there. There's some good fathers that can do absolutely amazing work with their children, love their children, would like to play a part. And we're looking to see how can those men be supported. We completely and truly acknowledge that there are some men that are not playing the father role properly. They are not acting as a true figure of a father as expected to be. But those good men out there, how can they be supported? Misty says, I am in Crown Court Monday and Tuesday exposing social care, and he has some hashtags. We will be back onto the comments, and we would like to go back to our guests and ask some questions on the children's rights. So we welcome you, Jason, back onto our screens. Jason, what about the rights of the children? Don't the children have any rights of their own?
They've got rights. I think one thing I changed over the years, and I just want to say that everything you've been saying just now has been making perfect sense. That there's an element of you change. Everyone's been banging the drum for fathers' rights, and I think what I started doing a few years ago when you meet Scouse Megaphone Man over there, that was the hashtag Scouse Megaphone Man. He's a children's rights campaigner of the UK, he champions children's rights. I believe, and he's coming on. He's been believing it for a long time. You look after children's rights, you sort of look after fathers' rights as well. I think because children deserve the right when it's safe to do so, when it's safe for both parents to be. They need both parents, so when it's safe to do so. So I think when I'm hearing comments about bad men, and you get bad men, you get bad women. Yeah, you go to any part of the world, it's going to be the same. No one's perfect. Everyone's human. I was going to say a swear word there, but I didn't. So that's me thinking before I speak. You see, I think children's rights are really, really, really important. So, but what really frustrates as a man when we are separated from our partners or ex-wives or whatnot, we are made to jump through hoops. We are made to prove. We're literally in family courts. We are guilty and have to prove ourselves innocent. I've dealt with cases where, and it happens a lot. It happens a lot where women, obviously, they have their safeguarding concerns, so they take a child. That's what their excuse. A man tries taking putting his safeguarding concerns out, takes a child, not allowed. And I think listening to Brian earlier in terms of the stats and everything that he's pulling out, I think they're brilliant. I think they're fantastic, and I think the stats speak for themselves. But experience and they're helping people and supporting people and being through it itself. And Brian's been through it. Everyone's been through it, and we need to fix children's rights. If you fix children's rights across everything, you should, in theory, then be able to fix fathers' rights and equality for men and women to have the love of their child.
Thank you for that, Jason. Jason, can fathers single-handedly raise their children on their own, or do men need women to be able to raise the children?
I think this is part of the problem. So the part of the problem is that the society has moved on, and what I say is there's modern men. Yeah, my dad was an absolute. I'm holding my tongue because I'm being polite. My dad wasn't the greatest, and I think I look back on my life and I think the mistakes that I've made, and I wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect, and I didn't have a father figure there. So we're looking at, we were saying earlier about a fatherless society and the impact of that. Knife crime, teenage pregnancies. Most of the stats for that are generally going to be from a fatherless family. The man gets the blame for that as well, because we're not in the house. But then we're not in the house because the mum doesn't want us there, or is making it difficult for us. So men can, and absolutely, and I've done it myself, and I would continue to do it with children. 100% can bring up our children. The only difference between us is obviously physically. Men feel the same emotion and same love and same purity, that bond. And I still deal with lots of dads, and their fear is they're not going to be able to see their children aren't going to feel, they're going to miss them. Their children are going to forget who they are. Biology is so strong and chemistry is so strong. They tried making me, people tried to make, Kafkas tried to make me go to walk-in centre, basically a support centre, to see my own daughter after 6 weeks. there's men who have gone years, nearly 10, 11 months, a year, not seeing their kids, FaceTime calls with their kids based on false allegations. And then nothing comes off the back of that. Men can absolutely bring up the children. It's disgusting still in this modern time where the only people who don't want to bring up their children are the politicians, the people who earn loads and loads and loads of money that want to put their kids into boarding school, and they can afford to do that sort of stuff. The average modern man that wants to love and care for the child, as you're going to see, I think the majority of men are, and I'll go back, yes, there's bad men, and yes, there's bad women. No one's, yeah, but that's regardless of that point, there's the majority would want to be dads and thrive on being dads.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. We will be back with you in a moment, and we are now going to welcome back onto our screens Brian. And Brian, thank you for joining us this evening, taking time out and multitasking, because this evening you have your son and you're multitasking. So great, Dad, you're showing us how it's done. First question for you: what about the rights of the children? What are your thoughts on the rights for children?
I would reframe the rights of the children to, in the context of family law anyway, and parental separation. I would reframe it. You know, the children's rights will be taken care of, or rather, the children's outcomes will be best taken care of if both the parents are in the best possible shape they can be under some really difficult circumstances, when a marriage or a partnership where there are children involved comes to an end. And that's really the crux of where this entire system is really quite perverse, in that it doesn't recognize, or doesn't want to recognize, even though for me it's really very obvious, that if one of the parents is left in a disadvantageous position, then the likelihood is that to some lesser or greater extent, they will not be able to be delivering as good a job of parenting as they otherwise would do. And if that means that one or the other parent is restricting access in order to make that happen, then it's going to impact the children all the more so. So where this system, effectively money follows the child, and there are incentives for a parent to restrict the other parent from having access, or making it very difficult for them to parent in an effective way. I think the term that's used commonly is counter-parenting rather than co-parenting. If we were to step back and say, right, at the point of separation, the statutory services are there to try to limit the conflict, give therapeutic support to conflict, and to ensure as much as is possible that both parents are able to, live at least a very basic life, where they're safe and sound and they've got a roof over their head, so they can have reasonable contact with their children, and that there's no fears that they're going to be, falsely accused of crimes they haven't committed, or that they're having their career destroyed, or that their children are emotionally disturbed, and their childhood is being disturbed by being exposed to alienating behaviors, or lots of involvement of professionals that could be avoided. That's all pretty dysfunctional stuff, I think. So if we reframed it as at separation, what can happen to ensure that both the parents come out of that in as good a shape as is possible based on what their circumstances are, then we would avoid the industry raiding their resources and leaving them in a worse position, or at least one of them in a very, very, very bad position, that often leads to severe mental health problems in some cases, suicide in other cases, and possibly even reactive violence as well.
Thank you. And do men need women to raise their children? Can they raise their children on their own? I've often heard when men go to court, fathers are at court, and they say that they are asked to have a partner so that it could be in their favor. So Brian, please tell us, do fathers need a woman to raise their children?
I don't think they need a woman. We're humans. We naturally partner up. But in terms of raising children, we certainly don't need to have women. I think it's more of a preference. And I raised my daughter for a year on her own when she was 10, when her mum was not well. And when her mum, regained her health, I made sure that my daughter was reintegrated with her, because it was plainly obvious that it's better for our daughter that she's raised by both her parents. We were separated, and we did a pretty good job of that. She's flourished as a result. It's a different can of worms with my son, but raising children is hard work, but so are many other things, and the system should be supporting parents who are left to raise children on their own in a way that helps them. But what we are finding is that it's actually creating more families where there is not co-parenting going on where it could be, and it's better for mums and for dads that they are sharing parenting roughly equally if they're both safe to do so. And the reality is that most parents are safe. The vast majority of parents, whether they're mums or dads, are safe parents. But in family court, we've got 88% of divorcing parents with dependent children turning to family court to battle over the children, and that's just absurd.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. We are going to take a moment to read some comments from our viewers, and we have our comments coming up onto the screen. And we have the comment that says, I applaud all of the speakers because this is something that doesn't get enough attention. There are men who choose to alienate themselves from their children, but there are men who are forced away. And J2E, we thank you for that comment. And Frank says, isn't it the parental responsibility to look after the child's right? And thank you for that comment. And that's what we're addressing, that when we are talking about alienating a parent, what about the child's right? We welcome some more comments back. Patrick T, thank you for joining us again this evening. And Patrick says, as a feminist, I believe that feminism also means believing that men can act outside of patriarch restrictions imposed on them by society. That can mean child rearing, being sensitive and emotional. And Matt, thank you for joining us, and thank you for supporting this show week after week. And Matt says, I'm thankful that I get custody of my 4 children so easily. I feel for parents fighting for custody, especially men who possibly face a reverse sexism. It also has negative effects on the children involved, and never forget that. And Norma says, it's all wrong. The whole system needs to be pulled down from the children's fathers and mothers. And Bangi says, do children from negative opinion to their father, which we have been influenced by the favored parent. We thank you. Norma says, my son is raising a daughter by himself, and he is the best father, man, provider, mother. Well done. And Simon says, I'm a single dad to one of my children, and he's happier and healthier than he has ever been. And well done to you, Simon. We know how much you love your Liam, and he's an amazing son. There's a lot of modern mothers are drugs users, and there's so much to look at this deeper than our emotions. We thank you for that. Vicky says, So happy, glad to hear that you're doing a brilliant job. To the fathers, I think Vicky is saying, keep up the amazing work, dads. And Misty says, hashtag cause me gap phenomenon. Women need men to raise a child. Patrick says, just as I know many great single female parents, and that is indeed true. Melissa says, do children form hatred towards the father even though alienation wasn't their choice? Vicky says, it's good to have male role models for the children because they all need superheroes to look up to. We thank you for all your comments as they're coming in. And Misty says, I'm in Crown against Parliament exposing this system. We thank you. We appreciate every comment. And as we talk about things, as we discuss this, it makes us more aware of the changes that need to be made and where gentlemen like we have on the panel today can best assist. We would like to welcome Sean back onto our screens. Sean, we would like to say happy birthday to your daughter and thank you for taking time out on your daughter's birthday and joining us on this show. We would like to say happy birthday. Please tell us, how old is she today?
She's 3 today. She's 3.
A happy 3rd birthday. If I could sing so beautifully, I would have sang, but I won't do that to her. Not today. But we wish her a very happy birthday. Can fathers single-handed raise their children on their own? Sean, can men do it by themselves without women?
No, most definitely. But obviously, it's not preferable. The ultimate perfect outcome would be to have stable parents, emotionally available, both supporting the children as they grow up to adulthood. That's the ideal, and for me, the best. But in terms of dads having to do because of circumstances, of course we can. Even the son that I'm estranged from, the first 3 years of his life, he basically lived with me. Wednesday to Friday, I'd have him even when I was going to university, when his mother used to abscond and go to Jamaica. And her trips, she had children outside of me, so she used to struggle with the day-to-day emotional costs. And Mama, wait, sorry about that. Mom.
That is the typical father that we're talking about. You're there to multitask, be on the show and be with the children because we're keeping it real. These are real fathers off today joining us today. So the birthday girl maybe, I think, came to say, it's my birthday after all. Thank you, Sean. And Sean, are women in control of the media when it comes to rights with children are concerned?
I think more so over the period of time. To be fair, I can understand it because when I went to university, I looked in the history of the welfare state and how things used to be prior to me being born, even before my parents were born. And in the 19th century, you had a religious system with the churches where they used to take in mothers that have been discarded by men, used and have children for them, and then they told them that they were bastards. And things like that. I can understand why the welfare was created because there's a lot of destitution and poverty. And irresponsible dads would leave the women that they didn't want to legitimize through marriage and leave them to their own devices if they're embarrassed about the situation or it affected their life chances or professional chances or their chances to become aristocrats. So I can understand why it was created. The welfare state was created in the first place to support single mothers that were struggling and wasn't getting the necessary support. So that is the basis of the welfare state. But as over time has developed, especially during the 20th century after the Second World War, I've noticed, as Brian said, it's become a way of collecting stealth taxes from normal members of the public. And from the welfare state being there to equalize and make sure that women are supported when they were discarded, it's now gone too far, as I can say too far to the left, where women are automatically put on a pedestal and said, oh, there must be something wrong with the dad if there's been a relationship breakdown because he's left the home and he's left the children with her. So automatically people think, well, there's something going on there. Is it infidelity? Is he abusing her? So this is where the domestic abuse, which, you know, has recently been assembled, given royal assent last week, of saying, well, you know, these are psychological coercive controls. They don't want to supplement mothers with their income. They're bullying them in the home, even if they're not physically abusing them. So I know there are the systems there to try and help with that. But they've, as I've said, they've gone too far in trying to readdress the balance where it's out of balance now. Instead of having parity and say, you know what, let's do it by case based on evidence. Has the dad really done this? Is the mother's false allegations true? In cases where it's gone the other way around, where sometimes the mothers are the victim of it and the dad's lying because he's thinking, you know what, they're going to lie on me anyway, so I'm going to lie on them first. Because as Brian said, the first move is, and that's where you're getting a lot of this conflict. And the government and the institutions, family courts, it's a way of making money. Because as you know, the civil courts, family courts, it's not like criminal law. It's all behind closed doors, so there's no scrutiny. So they're able to self-regulate, and you've got judges using discretionary powers sometimes, even when there's hard evidence showing that the father is more responsible and should get residency of the children. They're still supporting the mothers because it involves a lot more paperwork to transfer residency and benefits to the father. And the welfare state makes it beneficial for mother to say, you know what, the dad's not involved, he's abusing me, so they can get free legal aid and they can get increase in their benefit receipts. And that's what happens.
Wow, there's so much to learn, and there's so much that can be said. What would you like our viewers to hear from you today, Sean? What's your message out there? You have a campaign, and we will be having the details of how people can contact you and also how people can join your campaign. How many signatures have you got so far? What is the campaign about? Please share it with our viewers.
Well, I've got close to 8,000 signatures, but it's been a long time coming. It's roughly about 3 years to acquire those signatures. When I started, I was full of, zeal, thinking anyone that's been alienated, men and women, from their children would want to sign this petition, and I would get enough traction to where I could challenge Parliament, go to Parliament and say, look, something needs to be done because I've got all this support behind me. But I've noticed, as Brian said, it's a divisive subject. Some women feel like you're encroaching our territory. Who are you to tell me? Like as the comment that you had earlier, where she says, oh, well, I breastfed the child, I brought them up, and the fathers are crying and need to man up and take their troops. That's not always the case. Like I said earlier, with my eldest son, the first 3 years of his life, he spent most of the time with me, and I didn't claim any benefits for him. The mother was still getting child benefit and the tax credits and living community fund and things like this from DWP. And I was basically the main character, whereas one of my female friends was said, you know what, you should be getting that because you're looking after him most of the time. So I said, if he's so young, and between 0 and 3, you're having him 3-4 days a week, and she's only having him on Monday and Tuesday. And my parents would have him when I used to do security work on the weekends, like night work at nightclubs as a door supervisor. My parents would look after him from Friday night, and I'd come there on a Sunday and he'd still be there. So effectively, for 3 years, only Monday and Tuesday, she had a younger son. Now, there's reasons behind that because her background wasn't the best. And she had 2 other children that she struggled to deal with, the young children. And that's what happens. And when you have the mental breakdown or they get depressed, and fathers should be able to step in without having to go to family courts and child services to make sure that the best outcome, as you say, the best outcome for children. Because a lot of the time, that's not what happens.
That's correct. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell our viewers today?
Well, in future, everyone, it would be good if we could come together and stop the conflict in the press, ideally. To have parity of parenting, and not just from talking, but the actual deeds, not seeing it as a way to financially reward yourself by turning children against safe parents. It's diabolical, really. And we as a people, we need to do better, because if we were doing what we were supposed to do, there would be no funds, there would be no need to go to family court, there'd be no need to involve child services in our personal family lives, which that should be the last resort. It shouldn't be the first resort. And we need to do it better like that. In terms of contacting me, I'm trying to launch my own CIC company called Equal Start. I've got a website so far. I'm basing it around the signatories on my petition. Hopefully I can get some members and volunteers and maybe people that can help me on a mission to achieve better outcomes for all alienated parents. But if you can, the email that's been provided equals starts cic@gmail.com.
And we'll
Alternatively,
put you on the screen right now, and your email address as it comes up on the screen. And this is how to also contact Sean.
yeah,
Sean is on multi social media platforms, and your contact details are being put into the comment box below. Sean, we thank you so much for your time today, and happy birthday once again to your daughter. And thank you for taking time out. Truly appreciate it.
that's
Thank
okay.
you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Jason. Thank you, Jason. Jason.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. And thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it, because when we have been trying to communicate throughout the whole week, and you were telling me that sometimes you go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and you take calls until 1 a.m. And I remember the other day when I was trying to get hold of you, and you said, call me, let me know what time you're free. I'm up, because this is what I live to do. What would you like to share with our viewers today?
You're not alone. Ultimately, you can feel alone when you are going through. When you're going through what you're going through, you can feel so alone. I think no one, Sean, both Sean and Brian, and every other dad and mum because mums get alienated too, who experiences the loss of a child, or not loss, but the hurt of not being able to tuck your child into bed and hug and just give the love that you want to give. That feeling it's no words for it, and it changes you in it. And if you're alone, then call us, because fathersrightsukofficial.com or applewhat'sequality.com. We've got phones, we've got volunteers. We set this up. I've been doing it myself for a long time, since 2014, on the underground, I suppose, and then turned it into a business in the last 12 months. Not through wanting to, but because life has thrown us that way. But we've got phones on. My phone's always on. Most of what I do is talking, as you can tell, and just listening to people. And I think just reach out. Don't suffer in silence, because parental alienation has no gender. Abuse has no gender. We're all equal as one, ultimately, in the day. And I was dealing with someone the other night who said he compared us to Red Cross, because there are no services for men. There are no services for men in this little situation. You will get women that can go to hostels and that sort of stuff, and I'm grateful for that. I've got a daughter. If anything ever was bad happening to her, I want her to be safe. But at the same point, the amount of over lockdown, over the last 2 years, the stats for women making allegations and using the manipulating the UK, England and Wales family law system for their own personal gain to alienate the dads from the lives of the child. Over the last 2 years, it's gone up by, Brian will probably know it more than me, but it's gone up by 40%, something like that, just because they can, just because the system lets them do it. And if it does let you do it, I've got people all over the UK that potentially can help as well. So don't suffer in silence. Reach out, and where possible. You got Brian, you got Sean. There's loads of people out there. Loads of little small sort of charities, I suppose you could say, that are just there to help. We're plugging the hole. We're fixing something that's not there. So retail's going to change. Whole high street's going to change. I think what we need is to get more walk-in centres for men, women, and children, because mental health is a big thing as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you. And if you would like to contact Jason and all the support he has and he gives, all his contact details will be put in the comment box below. And if you need anything else, please do go onto his website, where there's so much more information and the links to how you can get hold of Jason, how you can contact him, and how he can best assist you. And as he said, he's 24/7. Thank you for joining us on the show today, Jason. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all our viewers. Thank you to the audience. We would like to welcome back Brian onto our screens, as we thank Brian for taking time out of his very, 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 very busy schedule, and also on your night of being a daddy. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And what is it that you would like to share with our audience, and What should we be expecting from UPF?
I would like to say, there's really good reason to have hope. You've got the wrong name on the screen. But I would really like to say there's lots of reason to have hope. There are some very, very high caliber people doing a lot of work that's not yet being seen, who are collaborating and cooperating and producing wonderful stuff. We're seeing bits of that coming out from various groups, and that's only going to accelerate, magnify, and hopefully UPF will be a big part of helping other groups and charities to magnify what they're already doing, and improve the rate of their output and the quality of their output and the level of service that they can deliver to the people in their hour of need and beyond. So there's loads of reasons to really be hopeful that change will come. And in the meantime, that there will be some pain, but we're not. That's not something that we're not used to, or something that we can't handle. Just be hopeful. Really, is the overriding message, and keep an eye on what's going on, because some really exciting things will be happening in the next year, 2 years.
Brian, we thank you so much for taking time out this evening, and we thank you for the information that you've shared. And once again, to our viewers and our audience, all of Brian's contact details, his website and his Twitter page where you can contact him, will be in the comment box below. Brian, thank you so much. I would like to thank all our guests for joining us this evening and for taking time out to discuss this, what may seem sensitive subject, touchy to some. I got so many messaging saying, "Oh, are you really going there?" Yes, I was really going there, because we need to talk about it. We need to address it, and we need to see the way forward. Next week at 8 p.m., we will be looking at women in charge. Is this the way forward? Are we changing the narrative of family dynamics? We'll be asking the questions: can women play the role of fathers? Are women the new men? Are they? Or do we still need the men? And how can we balance the men and women ratio? We know that as women these days, we're so independent, we are free, we are out there. But is there still a place for a man in our lives? I say, yes, there is. And can we do two things together? Yes, we can. Can we bring unity? Yes, we can. But let's look forward to hearing what our panel will be sharing with us and what you viewers say at home. This is all we have time for today, but we look forward to you joining us every Wednesday at 8 p.m. live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the other social media platforms we appear on. Thank you to all the Facebook pages, several of them that we appear live on. We appreciate you, and thank you for sharing. Once again, thank you to our guests, and thank you to you, our viewers, our audience. We love you. We appreciate you. You make the Extraordinary Achievers. This is all from us tonight, and we look forward to welcoming you back next week. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. You can now follow us on Facebook and subscribe our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and comment.